The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
It's one of my favorite all-time quotes, and it comes from Bill Parcells, and it's actually the title of a book that was written by Jerry Eisenberg about 35 years ago. It's "No medals for trying," meaning you can look good, you can make it close, but if you don't win, it doesn't matter. I don't think that applies here. Yes, Washington did not win. They had a chance at the end and could not get it done. But to go toe-to-toe with a team that could wind up in the Super Bowl this year and has an elite quarterback, an MVP, the reigning MVP, and a running back who is just a freight train, I'd say they looked pretty good. Not defensively, but the big thing about this season is, do they have a quarterback? 6 games have been played. But I think if you had a receipt here, you'd rip it up. I mean, it looks like Jayden Daniels is all that and more. And in defeat yesterday, he did some things that were even more impressive than he did in some of the wins. The 4th down touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin was beautiful. And you know, what we heard about him coming in was, yes, he's a runner. He's a great runner. He's got great speed, and he can throw a deep ball. He can also throw an accurate ball, and that is a big part of this league, and that's something that rookie quarterbacks often struggle with because in college football, you may play, especially in the SEC, you may play against one NFL defensive back per week. The NFL, it's nothing but NFL defensive backs, and their closing speed is something that's much different than it is in college. And to see the way he's fitting it into tight windows, to see the way that he is putting it in a place that only his receiver can catch it is remarkable. And you want to talk about the improvement of this guy. This I think, tells it all. First 2 weeks, Terry McLaurin had, I believe, 8 catches for 39 yards. And the narrative was, oh, my God, this kid can't find their top receiver. Terry McLaurin is the highest paid receiver on the team. He's a team captain, and there's no chemistry there. He can't. Well, what's happened in the last 4 games is remarkable. Here are the numbers for Terry McLaurin through 6. 29 catches, which means in the last 4 games, he's got 21, 356 yards, 4 touchdowns, which equals his production from last year. Now, what they did last year on offense, that was coaching malpractice by Eric Bieniemy, which is why he's not in the NFL right now. He's an offensive coordinator at UCLA. They totally underused him last year. But the first 2 weeks, the kid can't find him. And now they got magical chemistry going on. And here's another stat. Through the games from last night, things I guess could possibly change tonight, but through the games of last night, he has 51% of the team's receiving yards. No other receiver in the NFL has a bigger percentage of receiving yards for his team. So, in other words, what Jayden Daniels needed to improve on after 2 weeks, he's not only improved on it, but he's run past the other teams in what he's been doing with Terry McLaurin. And that is something that is really remarkable, and it's just another example of why people are wigging out about this kid. Now, the numbers are not overwhelming. Baltimore had a good plan for him. They have a very good run defense. They are not good against the pass, and Daniels had a pretty decent day throwing the football. He threw more than he ever has in a game this year, which is understandable since they were stopping the run and they're playing from behind. But he was 24 of 35, no interceptions. He's thrown 2 interceptions all year long, and neither one of them had a bearing on the outcome of the game, and they won both those games. 269 yards passing. Now, he did run 6 times, which is the fewest times I believe he's run in a game this year, and it was the fewest yards, 22. But everything else that he did, he made you believe. And that's really the theme that the players had in the locker room coming out of this. Like, even though they were down 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter against a really good defensive team and with a running back who could put the game in the cooler, and that's what we saw from Derrick Henry. He ran for Henry's numbers 24 for 132 yards. And, much like back in the day with John Riggins, when you wanted to put a lead away, you gave the ball to 44. This time they gave it to 22, and he was able to cement the win. But, you don't like to lose. And Dan Quinn had, I think, the proper tone yesterday in his news conference that you want to win these games, you want to have a chance, you want to give yourself a chance at the end. And, I think he also pointed out something important as well. Even though it was a 7-point loss, only one score, it did feel like a lopsided game, mainly because the Commanders got beat at their own game. The games that they have won, they have dominated time of possession. In this game, the Ravens held the ball for 36 minutes. Washington had it only 24. And that was a huge difference. This is Quinn assessing what happened. They did win the turnover battle, the one turnover. And, yeah, Lamar Jackson, a spectacular day, both running and passing. I mean, he is the MVP. He ran for 40 yards on 11 carries, and he also threw for 323 yards, only 6 incompletions, 20 of 26. And the interception that wound up in the hands of Mikey Sanderstrom, by the way, the first interception that the Commanders have had all year, took 6 games to do it. It bounced off the hands of Mark Andrews. I don't know how much fault it was of his, but that was something that Quinn thought maybe they could capitalize on and something he felt that they really needed in a game like this.
Coming in, we knew we'd have to steal some possessions, so to get the first turnover I thought was a big deal, to get a turn of it and get there, and we thought that would have to be the way we find the margins to go win. And so when didn't create any offense, they did a good job at taking care of the ball, but not enough sustained drives.
Dan, in a game where Derrick Henry's obviously stopped slowing him down is a focus, was this a game where, I don't know if you needed more from your corners, but kind of exposed them a little bit more because you had more focus up on the run?
Yeah, I think you have to. This is a team that was leading the NFL in running, so going in, you have to do that. I thought earlier in the game, we played the run better. As the game wore down, I thought we wore down some, and including into the 4-minute at the end to go get a stop. So in the first half, I think they ended up with maybe 51, somewhere in that space, which I would have said would probably be somewhere you would have thought. And then at the second half, just like I said, too many shots at it.
And I know there's no moral victories at this level, but in terms of Jaden, the fact that they score, you guys come back and score, score again, get the field goal block, and then the second half kept coming. What does that say about him and his ability to be unrattled, seemingly?
I loved like answers, and so you don't wait for a long time to do that. Again, at the end of the half, we thought we had a chance to go down, get a stop, get a 2-minute together, go down, take a shot to get the ball back again. So in those moments, Ben, he is really strong and really comfortable in that spot. We've, as a team, practiced a lot of those situations a bunch, and it shows.
Yeah, and Austin Seibert did miss his first field goal. That may have maybe swung the momentum a little bit. I mean, again, when Dan Quinn says that it seemed like a lopsided game, it really was. I mean, it seemed like Baltimore was going to pull out whatever they needed, and they were able to take advantage of the running game and really ram it down their throats, which made the difference in time of possession and ultimately points. But I'll tell you this, the men in purple came away very impressed with number 5. Lamar Jackson and Jaden Daniels have some type of relationship. Maybe it's related to the Heisman Trophy. But this was Lamar with Tracy Wolfson of CBS. And by the way, they had the number 1 team carrying this game, as Candace Buckner wrote in her column in the Post today. In what can be seen only as a sign of the end times, 2 television networks wanted the rights to air a game featuring Washington's professional football franchise. All the juice surrounding the Commanders-Ravens matchup, the Beltway Bowl, the day when DMV residents could travel to downtown Baltimore and don their burgundy and gold without feeling foolish. Think about that. that we have gone past the time that you don't have to be embarrassed to be a Washington fan. And NBC wanted to flex it into the Sunday Night Football slot. She writes, CBS, the network that held the rights, wouldn't let this one go and instead played up the Commanders-Ravens as its marquee game. The network brought its A-team, Tracy Wolfson, reporting from the sideline with Jim Nance and Tony Romo commentating. This was Tracy Wolfson after the game with Lamar, and again, the theme seems to be the kid can play.
You have to like how this team has come together after an 0-2 start. What has been the biggest difference for you guys?
Just taking accountability from the MEs. We made a lot of mistakes the first 2 games. that's the NFL. You know, everything is not perfect. But we just trying to minimize our mistakes and just put points on the board, and that's what we've been doing.
Derrick Henry, once again, doing what he does. But you got this done through the air, over 300 yards passing. Zay Flowers came up big. How were you able to exploit this defense?
Man, just give my guys an opportunity. Guys were just making guys miss, getting yards after catch. Some guys were popping open from the schemes we were doing. It was just an all-around team effort on offense.
I know the respect that you have for Jaden Daniels, and he has for you. You had a chance to talk a little bit after the game. What did you say to him?
I need that jersey. I need that jersey. Yeah, man. But yeah, man, definitely a great player. He just his fifth, sixth game in the league, rookie year. And the sky's the limit for him.
I'm sure he wants your jersey too.
We're going to see. But I'm definitely going to send it to him.
Yeah, they did exchange jerseys, not surprising. And then in the news conference a little bit later on, Lamar doubled down on the praise of Daniels.
I believe he deserves all the hype he's getting. He played a tremendous game out there. They just came up short. And he's been proving it. His rookie season, first 6 games, he's been playing amazing.
Jason Wilson, by the way, mentioning with Lamar how Zay Flowers played. This was a pick-your-poison game. First half, Commanders trying to stop the run. Zay Flowers had 9 catches for 132 yards. That's career highs for both, but all in the first half. He didn't do anything in the second half, but they didn't need him to do it because they were starting to do it in other ways, running the football with the way they were able to do that effectively, dominate time of possession. And Mark Andrews caught a touchdown pass. That was the one that was thrown yesterday by Lamar. The other, they got it on the ground. And that's the kind of thing you're facing when you're playing a team that's a really good organization. I mean, this, what they have done with this offense, and it rides a lot on the quarterback for sure, but the offensive line is playing very, very well. Zach Ertz has been a huge addition, veteran tight end. They knew that was going to be important for a rookie quarterback. They picked up some street free agents who have done a nice job for them. Noah Brown had 4 catches again yesterday. I mean, those things. Austin Eckler has been a big addition. So they rebuilt the offense. Defense is going to take a while. And just because they have cap room next year doesn't mean you're going to have a top-ranked defense. Here's how bad the defense is right now, and it's related to just a complete disaster of first-round picks. I mean, the coach-centric operation under Ron Rivera, as we get further and further away from it, what a freaking disaster. And with the Martys, Hurney, and Mayhew, they may be fine guys with good track records. It didn't work well at all. And just, you look at yesterday, the last 4 draft picks, first-round draft picks, Daniels is the latest, but the 4 previous to Daniels either weren't on the team or were healthy scratches. Chase Young is now with his 3rd team in 2 years in New Orleans. They gave up 51 points yesterday. He's probably on his way out of the league. Jamin Davis, who was taken in the first round the following year, they tried to make him into a middle linebacker. That didn't work. They tried to make him into an outside linebacker. This year, he's a pass rusher who they have kept inactive now 2 games. They didn't even, healthy scratch, didn't play. And it looks like it's time to close the books on Emmanuel Forbes, who was their first rounder from last year, who once again was a healthy scratch yesterday. Jahan Dotson, the one offensive guy that they drafted in the first round, he's been traded to Philadelphia for draft picks and doesn't seem to be making much of an impact there. So that tells you how behind the 8 ball they are, and that's why it's going to take some time. I think you look at the Ravens. I put this out on Twitter yesterday, got a lot of reaction to it. I think if you look at the Ravens, this is where Washington wants to be in 2 years. And with cap space and with a professional running the drafting and the free agency in Adam Peters, they have a chance to get there. And finally, they have some structure in their organization. And they have the one thing that is the absolute most important thing to find, the QB. And if you look, just because you think you have one, by the way, doesn't mean you necessarily have to do. The other 3 teams in the division have invested heavily in quarterbacks. And look what we got. We got Dak Prescott, whose team lost 47-9 yesterday. We've got Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. Yes, he's been to a Super Bowl, but against a totally inept Cleveland team yesterday, they barely won 20-16. And Daniel Jones was again crapola last night with one touchdown for his team as they lost 17-7, and he threw another soul-crushing red zone pick. And they're making big money. And Jaden Daniels is on a rookie deal for at least the next 4 years. We'll probably get an extension as soon as he can get one. And everything is coming up roses right now. I mean, this is Roquan Smith, linebacker for the Ravens. His impression after seeing number 5 for the first time.
Washington is in good hands with him. I think the guy's he's the truth for sure. Like, he can run it, he can throw it, whatever you want. And for him to come into a hostile environment and perform the way he did, I got much respect for him. And he took some licks too. So I heard he was tough as nails anyway. And even from watching him in college at a couple games, but he showed that. So much respect and love for that guy. And yeah, Washington's in good hands.
Yeah, I think you have to feel that way. So it's hard to feel great after a loss, and boy, this town would have been really on its ear had they won. But and I know you play the schedule game and it doesn't always work out that way, but look what's ahead here. Look at what is, especially with what looks like an absolute mess in Dallas, clearly some problems in Philadelphia, and a Giants team that they already beat and doesn't look good at all. These are the games that are coming up. They're already 7.5-point favorites against Carolina. We saw Caleb Williams play really well yesterday in London, so that's going to be a tough test when Chicago comes in. But then they're at the Giants. They're home against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's winning, but not by much. They may be a better team than Pittsburgh. At Philadelphia on Thursday night. That's going to be a tough environment to play in for sure. Then Dallas comes here Thanksgiving weekend. Tennessee is at home. They got a bye week, so for the 4-game stretch run, they're going to be rested. At New Orleans. New Orleans doesn't have a quarterback right now. Spencer Rattler's playing. They may by the time they get there, have one. Then Philadelphia at home versus Atlanta. Atlanta looks like they're coming, and that might be, for playoff positioning or a playoff spot. And then at Dallas to finish up the season. I mean, they already have 4 wins. 9 is going to get them in with, 11 games to play? You think you win 5? You win 5, you got 9. You win 6, you win 10, you're probably in. So, early to play the game, but it's an improving team where it looks like the rest of the division is starting to crater. So, very encouraging stuff, even off a loss. We'll have much more to say about it coming up. Much more reaction from the locker room and what Jaden Daniels says about his performance. All that's still ahead. But let's do a little baseball next. We had a blowout last night in the opening game of the NLCS. The Dodgers beating the Mets 9-0. Tonight we get started in the American League Championship Series with Cleveland advancing, and they will play the Yankees, who have an MVP who is scuffling right now in the playoffs, and his playoff numbers all time are not that great. The Aaron Judge dilemma for the Yankees as they head into the ALCS tonight. We'll look at that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
It's funny. When I was growing up, there was a period of time here for about 3 years where we only had one team, and it was the Washington Redskins. The Senators left town 1971. We didn't have the Bullets here from Baltimore yet. They didn't arrive until 73, and the Caps didn't start as a franchise till 74. So the only pro team in town was the Redskins. I spent 5 years working in New York in the late 80s and early 90s, and I was just amazed at the number of teams. You got 3 hockey teams, you got 2 basketball teams, you got 2 football teams, you got 2 baseball teams. And college sports really takes a back seat. Like St. John's has to be great in basketball for people to pay attention to it. College football doesn't exist there at all, except for Columbia, and they usually stink. But the pro teams, it's remarkable. So this is the sports day coming up in New York today. At 1 o'clock this afternoon, the Devils are playing Utah. Utah used to be the Phoenix Coyotes. They don't have a nickname yet. They've moved to Utah, so they're just Utah, kind of like Washington football team, which is the name I thought they should have stayed with. Also, 4 o'clock, you got the Mets and Dodgers NLCS Game 2 as the Dodgers won 9-0 last night. Rangers are hosting Detroit at 7 o'clock in hockey. Then you got Game 1 of the ALCS with the Yankees playing the Guardians. And then the Jets and the Bills tonight. followed at 9 o'clock with the Islanders playing the Colorado Avalanche. It's, and what do you pay attention to? Now, the people are going to be paying attention to the baseball teams because New York is a baseball town. But with all the drama about the Jets, they're be very interested to see how Aaron Rodgers plays. So there's all kinds of stuff going around in New York today, and what a wild day. And that's why when you do sports radio there, you really can't spend much time on one team, although what does happen is something crazy happens like the Robert Saleh firing, and that's all they talk about for 3 days. But, man, that's a day. That's a sports day. All right, included in that is, of course, the Yankees playing the Guardians, and the question about whether or not the MVP of the league, he will be the MVP, Aaron Judge, will quote-unquote, step up. Now, there's a long history of this in New York, of course, going back to 1977 when Reggie Jackson hit 3 home runs on 3 consecutive pitches off 3 different pitchers in the deciding, or the game that decided the World Series against the Dodgers to win it, and he picked up the nickname Mr. October. And he rode that into 1978 when the Yankees repeated. 1981, Reggie's gone, and the new star there is Dave Winfield. Dave Winfield goes 2 for 26 in the series. Yankees lose to the Dodgers, and George Steinbrenner calls him Mr. May. And while there's no more George Steinbrenner around to do this, you got to look at the playoff numbers for Aaron Judge, and Mr. may not be unfair. He's played 48 postseason games. His batting average is .207. He's got 38 hits. He does have 13 homers and 25 runs batted in. And this year, he's laying an egg again. He's gone 2 for 13 in the 4-game series that the Yankees won. No home runs, no runs batted in. So Mike Hill, who is filling in for Rich Eisen and is a Yankee fan, went the route of, kind of tapping his fingers like, when is this going to happen? And if you're going to be truly a great player, you got to perform in October. Jason Stark, who's covered baseball forever, did it for the Philadelphia Inquirer, did it for ESPN for a long time. Now he's with The Athletic. This was his response to Mike Hill going, okay, October's here. Aaron Judge, you better produce.
Come on, man. At some point, Aaron Judge is going to have a Mr. October moment. It's one of the crazy aspects to baseball is, right, David Fry can be Mr. October. Yeah. And Aaron Judge takes all the heat. Kyle Schwarber actually made this point the other night. I was at the Mets-Phillies that, if you look at an NBA game, Steph Curry has the ball 100 times a night. And Aaron Judge, Kyle Schwarber, the stars of our sport, what do they get? 8 swings a night? And so I think one of the things we do best is overreact to a given night or a given week in October. I do think he's been better the last 2 games. You're really not seeing him chasing. He hit a couple of balls in Kansas City that were 114, 115 miles an hour. You can see it's in there, but like if your question is it fair to demand that Aaron Judge eventually do that thing that they're paying him to do in these games? I think that is fair. The Yankees are going to win the World Series. I don't think Aaron Judge hitting 154 in every round is going to fly.
No, yeah, and I agree with you. Like, it's not going to fly. Not in New York City. In any other city, that he would probably be able to get away with it. But once again, like you said, we criticize Barry Bonds for this. Even in the NFL, they used to criticize Peyton Manning because, hey, you can win all the MVPs you want to, but if you don't show up in the postseason against the New England Patriots when it matters the most and not get your team to the Super Bowl, you're going to be criticized. I think Aaron Judge is a great guy, a wonderful guy, a media-friendly guy, and people love him. But once again, if you don't show up when it really matters the most, I think it's fair that you can put the onus on him for his team not getting to the World. Look, once again, it's been 15 years since the Yankees got to the World Series. He's gone to the ALCS 4 times. Since 2021, he hasn't done jack for the New York Yankees in the postseason. And once again, you talk about David Fry having a Mr. October moment. Aaron Judge has not had a Mr. October moment, period, in a Yankee uniform.
Okay, that's true, but could I remind you something? They just won that series. If I had said to you a week ago, if Aaron Judge is going to hit 154 in the division series and drive in no runs, do you think would you have told me you think the Yankees are playing right now?
Not at all. Not at all.
No.
John Carlos Stanton is carrying this team right now. Gleyber Torres is carrying this team. And also, I need people like Jazz Chisholm to shut up when it comes to, talking smack. Don't talk smack and say people are lucky and you don't come through yourself. So I'm going to spread the criticism around. This is just me being a Yankees fan. So forgive me. Let me go back to being a professional here, Jason Stark, and talk about it.
I know. Can I just say something, though? I don't want to zip past what their bullpen has done.
Yes.
Before we really mention that, because a couple weeks ago, I was sitting around a ballpark talking to some scouts who were advancing for their teams ahead of the postseason. And we started talking about the Yankees. And here's the question that came up. After Luke Weaver, who's their second most reliable reliever? And we had a hard time agreeing on one. Okay, it seemed like an excellent question to ask.
Canely.
And then that bullpen goes out and gives up no earned runs in the whole series.
Yeah.
And they did that at a time when it feels like everywhere else, the best relievers on earth have been giving it up in a bunch of crushing defeats. Think about it. Emmanuel Clase and Cade Smith in Cleveland and Josh Hader in Houston and Devin Williams in Milwaukee. And hey, Jeff Hoffman had a fantastic year for the Phillies. And while all that's going on, the Yankees bullpen turns unhittable. Just a reminder that baseball this time of year is just amazing.
Yeah, and there was, concerns about the Dodgers and their pitching. Well, they've thrown 31 consecutive shutout innings, 3 straight shutout wins in the postseason. They've used 13 pitchers to do it. I mean, it's a totally different game than what we grew up with. It really is. And, the Nationals built their World Series championship team 5 years ago on starting pitchers. They had Scherzer and they had Strasburg, and they thought that adding a third pitcher would be the difference, and it was, and they went on to win. Now, I don't know. I mean, do you invest in starting pitching? They get hurt all the time. Just load up on relievers. Now, one of the things that John Smoltz is talking about is that you would tweak the rules, have fewer relievers allowed on your staff, and maybe force pitchers to go longer, or maybe they won't. Maybe this is just baseball now, and guy goes out for 2 or 3 innings, does his job, may not give up a run, sometimes not even give up a hit. Doesn't matter. Somebody's next in the rotation. And anyway, the Yankees and the Indians get started tonight. How about Lane Thomas? I don't know if you were watching. There's so much stuff to watch over the weekend, and it was a great game. That Alabama played against South Carolina at home, and they almost lost, which would have set Tuscaloosa on fire. But they managed to pull it out. But at the same time, the Guardians were playing the Tigers, and they had Tigers had their ace on the mound, and Lane Thomas stepped up, bases loaded, first pitch, boom, grand slam, which helped the Indians advance. The Indians. Tony Romo called them the Redskins once yesterday. The Guardians advance to Game 1 tonight. That's going to be on TBS at 7:30. And then at 4 o'clock this afternoon, the Mets and the Dodgers in Game 2, as the Mets obviously need to do 2 things, pitch better and at least get some more hits. Shut out last night, 9-0. There's a story in the Metro section of the Post today, and maybe Dan Snyder is a name that we should never speak here again. We want to get further and further away from him and pretend maybe that he never really existed, even though that's impossible. But as this team is clearly turning the page and is a different type of team and a different type of organization than he left behind in July of 2023. But just these stories that are still floating to the surface. And this is about the 2 area homes that he has for sale. Now, one of them he donated to the American Cancer Society, but they've had to drastically cut the price. And the other is in Fairfax. And at one point, he had the 2 houses up for sale for $90 million. That's dropped significantly. But what they're saying is both of them may be teardowns. Yeah, teardowns, because the way that they're put together, and this kind of mirrors the stadium, right? At one point, he made it the biggest stadium in the league, 91,000. Then he had to shrink it down as nobody was going to the games, and those who were rooting for the other team. And what's left behind is such a mess that the new owners have had to dump $75 million into it just to make it inhabitable. The leaky sewage pipes, the railings that collapsed, all that garbage that was going on there. And his homes, not that they're garbage, but one of the things that it says in this story is that both homes, while the land is beautiful, most luxury buyers at that price point will consider them teardowns. To most people, the idea of buying them, then tearing down a 25,000 square foot mansion might seem ludicrous, but they say wealthy buyers want higher ceilings and larger entertaining spaces than the homes offered, so it would need an extensive renovation, and nobody wants to sit through a long renovation for a 20,000 square foot house. It's a multi-year effort, so they just tear them down and build a new one. And these are big, monstrous houses that were built for his ego, and one of them famously, the one on the Potomac where he chopped down 130 trees on federally protected land, and they did not find any wrongdoing, and Snyder had offered the Park Service a $25,000 donation for permission to cut down the trees. That they never got around to it. He just did it anyway. So that's a little skeevy. But these 2 houses, the first one was listed at $49 million. That's now been dropped like $20 million. It's just it just speaks to a person who was unrealistic about a lot of things, had a massive ego, very insecure, couldn't talk to anybody, and now he just leaves behind what is a complete embarrassment. These big monstrous properties that could be just torn down because the people that are going to move into these things, the really few people who have the money to do this, they don't want this. That's not the kind of house they want. And just to give you an idea about the price, the property taxes on the home in Fairfax, almost $500,000, $436,000 per year. Well, again, if you have to ask the price, you can't afford it. But that house that he donated to the American Cancer Society in May, the asking price was $34.9 million. This last month, the price was dropped to $29.9 million, nearly $20 million less than the original price. I mean, just ugh. And he's moved to London. It's not like, if he wanted to come back here, I guess he could go to a private room and find a place in a restaurant, but he, can't go to a restaurant, can't go to a play. One time he used to like to go to movies. He couldn't do that now. He's reviled. People hate him in his hometown. That's. I know it's great to be sitting on a pile of money like that, but just all these things add up. And oh yeah, by the way, doesn't have enough room for entertaining. Well, he didn't have many friends, so he didn't need a place to entertain. He just wanted a monument to himself and built these monstrous properties and cut down trees and left behind a wake of icky, icky, icky. All right, coming up, I want to play something from Nick Allegretti, who is a guard on this team. He has 3 Super Bowl rings from the Kansas City Chiefs, and there was a time in this town where the offensive linemen were the media stars. Yeah, because they stayed together. The quarterbacks changed. The running backs changed. The coach didn't change. Joe Gibbs was the coach for 12 years, but the constant was the linemen. And those guys became media stars. I think you're going to hear Nick Allegretti as a media star in the not-too-distant future if this team continues to win. We'll play some of what he said yesterday in the locker room and much more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Bram Weinstein coming up at 11 o'clock. He called yesterday's game in Baltimore. And Tony Kornheiser at 2 o'clock now. He was teasing on ESPN last week on Pardon the Interruption about bringing the bandwagon back. Yeah, hasn't been out of the garage since 1992, and it won't come out now that they lost in Baltimore. But yeah, Tony's sort of reinvesting in the team. He's never really a fan. He is a fan of the Nationals, but yeah, that 1991 season was really big for his career as well as pre-TV. And he rode that bandwagon all the way to Minneapolis, where the Redskins won the Super Bowl that year. So I'll be interested in his thoughts coming up at 2 o'clock. Meantime, I've been really impressed with Nick Allegretti since his opening news conference. He was part of the offseason free agent haul by Adam Peters. He was a player on the Kansas City Chiefs for the first 4 years of his career, played on 3 Super Bowl teams, played through a torn biceps muscle in the Super Bowl last year. And I just thought he was really, really smart and really well-spoken at his news conference. And I've continued to be impressed with the interviews that he does either during the week or after games. And, this is a guy who has been to the mountaintop with the best quarterback in the game. I mean, he has played with Patrick Mahomes for a long time. He has played on a team that continues to win. It is the modern dynasty, 3 Super Bowls in 4 years. I think you put you in the dynasty class, and they are that, and they're still undefeated and maybe making a run at a third straight Super Bowl championship, which no team has ever done. So he's come from the top. And, sometimes guys come in and they look at the new team and the new quarterback and they go, well, this is nice for now, but there's a long, long way to go. And he knows there's a long, long, long way to go. But what he is talking about with Jaden Daniels, I think, is the same kind of things that he's seen with Patrick Mahomes. And this was Nick Allegretti after the loss yesterday in Baltimore. And where this team is, even though they're 4-2, not necessarily considered among the elite, even in the NFC, which is, kind of having a down year. But just to hear him talk about Jaden Daniels having been with Patrick Mahomes, I think is a very encouraging thing, and he expresses it so well.
I mean, I really like the way that you go down 2 scores. You don't want to, but it wasn't, nail in the coffin. We believed that we were going to be able to go down, drive, score a touchdown, and be in the game. Obviously at the end of the game, we weren't able to, get it done, get that last chance, but this is a hard place to play. It is really easy to go down 14. I don't know at what point it was, maybe late third quarter, early fourth, and you kind of be demoralized. Like, man, we're on the road, loud crowd, down 2 scores to, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. A tough place to be, but the energy was there. The guys were confident. We knew we had an ability to go down and score. That's awesome. Knowing that the guys in the locker room believe in, ourselves, believe in the team, believe in, DQ, Cliff, that's awesome. So, happy with.
What did that drive tell you about Jaden?
He's a competitor. I mean, I think that's something we've all known, but he's not content with being. A lot of times, rookie quarterbacks, they go out and they'll throw for 4,000 yards. Not a lot of times, sorry, but that happens, and everyone's really excited. And superstar quarterback. I don't think he wants to be the guy that ends his rookie year with great stats. He wants to win. That is what you want at a quarterback. He couldn't care if he throws for 200, 400, or 100. He wants to win the game, get out with a win, and that is such an important quality because it's easy to just care about yourself and be like, well, I'm a great quarterback. I've got great numbers in the air, on the yard, or on the ground. It's important for personal reasons, but when you want to win football games, that's what you have to care about. And I love the way that Jaden approaches games.
Yeah, I hesitate to do this because of the tragedy of Dwayne Haskins and the fact that he was killed in a car accident after he left here and gone to Pittsburgh. But just for comparison's sake, he was a first-round pick. And remember Ron Rivera's first year here. I think he had made a promise to Dan Snyder that he was going to see if his second-year quarterback could get it done. Things had not worked out with Jay Gruden, who didn't want him, didn't want the team to take him. Dan Snyder hopped off his yacht and said, no, we're going to take him. We're taking Dwayne Haskins, partly because he had gone to the same high school as his son. And he was, he was a problem on and off the field. Seen during the height of the pandemic without a mask at a party when everybody was so concerned about the COVID spreading. And also that it was pretty clear he wasn't putting in the time in the tape room that he needed, wasn't showing up early to do that as Jaden Daniels does here. But also one of the reasons he was benched, and it was after 4 games, and I think they won one of them. They'd been competitive in 2 of the others. It didn't look like he deserved to be benched, but one of the things he did was after a loss to Baltimore. And I think they must have been at Baltimore that year. Yeah, maybe it's the last time they played there. He was talking about his stats, throwing for over 300 yards. And it was pretty clear to Ron Rivera that he's going to have a problem with his team, so he had to bench him and put him on the bench that year. And that's when he turned to, I forget who the backup quarterback. I think somebody named Allen, another quarterback named Allen. He played, he got hurt, and that's when they went back to Alex Smith. But what Allegretti is saying here is this is a guy who's only concerned about winning. And he said it's not unusual to have a rookie quarterback who's concerned about stats. So that's very encouraging to me to hear that from him. And I also, if you listen to him speak, he's very well thought out. He makes his points. He's clear on that. He's concise. And I think of the guys who became media stars here. I mean, think about this. Joe Theismann was Mr. TV. He had an incredible TV career after he finished playing, but he even had a great career while he was playing. John Riggins, one of the most quoted athletes, smart athletes, did a lot of media while but after his career was over. These guys were big, charismatic stars. Yet the Hogs really were able to market themselves well. They put out that poster, Hogs Night Out. And 3 of them became very, very popular in media after their careers. Joe Jacoby, he did pre and post with me for a long time, did a lot of radio and some TV. Jeff Bostic did a lot of television, worked for NBC, did stuff for Fox, then moved with his brother to Atlanta and did very well in real estate after that. And then Mark May was so good, he became a network star at ESPN for a long time, for like 20 years. These were offensive linemen. If this team continues to be good, watch out for Nick Allegretti. I'd like to be his agent. I think he's going to do really well in media. A couple of college things, and this is, I felt this way when they switched over to NIL, where athletes could make money. I thought the 2 schools who would be hurt most by this were the service academies, or the 3 with the Air Force. And I thought, well, okay, what the service academies offer is career stability. You commit to them, they commit to you. They give you an education, they give you a career as long as you want it in the military, and it's kind of a trade-off there. And some guys, want that. Not necessarily the ones who are going to make millions of dollars in the NFL, but, players who previously went to college didn't make any money. Well, I thought, that the talent's going to be sifted away from them. They're not going to go there. Well, look at this. Army and Navy are both ranked. That's the first time that's happened since 1960, and it's the first time since 1945 that both have been unbeaten this late in the season. Army is 6-0, Navy's 5-0, having a bye week this past week. They got to play against Notre Dame in 2 weeks, but still, I mean, this is absolutely remarkable and just stunning to me. I don't really have a good explanation for it, but that's the way things are working out, and good for them. I mean, it's Maryland's starting to be disappointing. They had a very bad game on Friday night against Northwestern, and I think their chances now with the rest of the schedule look pretty bleak in terms of making a bowl for a 4th straight year. The only winnable game left on the schedule looks like Rutgers. So at 6-6, they may be 3-3 after 6 games. Their season looks like it's gone down the tubes pretty quickly. But Navy just up the road in Annapolis, man, that's a great story. And with Army, the same thing. And we've talked about this. The way things could work out, since they're both in this America East conference, or what used to be the America East, they're in the same conference now. Okay. So it's possible that with the Army-Navy game, they will play 2 weeks in a row, that they will play for the conference championship and or vice versa. I forget how the schedule works, but it's possible they play the Army-Navy game and the conference championship in back-to-back weeks. That's how crazy things are in college football. And then this, check out how things work now with this conference realignment. You know, when back in the day, and I know this is not realistic anymore, but the ACC at one point had 7 teams in it. And all of them except Maryland, and you could even do a bus ride with Maryland because you're talking maybe 4 or 5 hours down to North Carolina. But everything was right there. Duke and North Carolina are 8 miles apart. And now you look at these monster conferences. The Big Ten has 18 teams, I think. The SEC has 16 teams. And the geographic layout of the Big Ten is just insane. And now despite Colin Cowherd going up on Instagram at halftime as Penn State was losing at USC over the weekend and said, tisk, 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 I told you so. You can't go to California and win. Well, Penn State did. They wound up winning that game. But the amount of travel that's involved now in the Big Ten, and here's how it's having an effect. Chuck Culpepper had a story over the weekend about this, that the airport that Penn State normally flies out of, the runway is too small to accommodate a plane that would have to go to the West Coast. Based on runway length, size of plane, weight of plane, fuel on plane, you can't get out of there. So they have to bus 100 miles to get to the airport, and that's, 200-mile round trip on a bus, not to mention the flight to USC, which is like 3,000 miles. And Ohio State going to Oregon, you think that played a factor in them losing? That's over 2,000 miles. Penn State to USC, 2,200 miles. Washington to Iowa, 1,500 miles. Wisconsin to Rutgers, 786 miles. Didn't affect Wisconsin. They blew the doors off of Rutgers. But earlier this year, USC lost at Michigan, 1,900 miles. Minnesota, 1,500 miles. While winning against Wisconsin, 1,600 miles. Michigan State took a drilling at Oregon, having to go nearly 2,000 miles. It has an effect. And nobody cares because the conference is printing money. And, the big conferences, they're now acting like the crime families. They're saying, oh, yeah, everything's running great here. What are you guys worried about? No problems. No problems. And, this is just insanity. The conferences used to be built up on geographics and geographical rivalries. And the fact that, if you could get a ticket, if you were a North Carolina fan, you could go to Duke and vice versa and drive only 8 miles to do it. Well, this is just nuts. And to think that teams that used to be rivals in big bowl games, like everybody I would anyway, look forward on January 1st to the San Gabriel Mountains at 5 o'clock and USC playing Ohio State or Michigan or UCLA playing one of the two teams, and that would be part of the whole big roundup of the college football season. And sometimes you'd have a named national champion, not a national championship that was won, but sometimes you'd have that coming out of it. And now it's like, oh, yeah, it's a conference game. Throw out the record books. Well, it's a conference game between Penn State and USC. No, that should be a Rose Bowl game, but it's not. And the difficulty of doing this is amazing. Now, what you're not hearing is, oh, yeah, this is financially unstable. We can't continue to do this. Yes, they can. And what Penn State is now asking for is a bigger runway at the local airport. Not that they have to travel to get to one. No. Build us a bigger runway. Don't have Muhammad go to the mountain. Have the mountain come to Muhammad. Why? Because the money is just insane. The television money is through the roof. Everybody's getting rich. And all the hand-wringing that went on of, oh, God, if we start paying the players, there just isn't going to be enough money. Nope. It's gone the other way. And the collective, or whatever you want to call it, it's just a money gusher for everybody, and that's why you have these games, coast-to-coast games, which don't seem to make any sense, but they are conference games, and that's the new reality in college football. All right, coming up, react from Jayden Daniels to yesterday's loss, react from others in the locker room, plus Coach Dan Quinn, and much more. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. You know, I'm old enough to remember when the first-round draft pick who wore number 5 was a complete bust. And it wasn't long before we all realized that Heath Schuler wearing number 5 wasn't going to get it done. Well, 6 games into his NFL career, the new number 5, the new first-round draft pick, drafted number 2, looks like he's the real deal. And as long as you got number 5, anything seems to be possible. And it's been a while since you come off a loss where you feel, wow, this is really something. And not that this is a Super Bowl contender this year. This is a team that's weak defensively, and we saw that yesterday as they were pretty much run over by the Ravens. They had no answer for Derrick Henry, and Ravens dominated time of possession. But we saw some things out of Jayden Daniels yesterday where he's not just really savvy. He's not just a terrific runner as a quarterback. He's not just a guy with a strong arm who can throw it down the field. He's accurate. He's really smart. He's really instinctive. And the plays that he made yesterday with his arm, because they pretty much bottled him up. He had 22 yards rushing. I mean, that's not his game. 6 carries for 22 yards. Not that you want him carrying it 16 times, but you know, that's his big strength is once he gets out of trouble, he can really pick up some yardage downfield, as we've seen him do this year. But the Ravens were ready for that. They're a good team. They're a team that could win the Super Bowl this year. They got the MVP at quarterback. They got the best running back in the game. They got some outstanding linebackers. They got stability. They got a front office, which doesn't change. They got a coach who's been there for 15 years. They're the very opposite of what Washington has been over the last 25 years or so under Dan Snyder, who's fortunately long gone. So you come out of this and you look at a loss by 7, and Dan Quinn was right yesterday when he said it felt more lopsided, and it did because of the way that the Ravens were able to dominate time of possession. But they were in it. You know, it's a 7-point game. And Terry McLaurin, who's been here through some of the worst of times, just absolutely disgraceful last year in the way that he was used. He's 4 touchdown catches this year. That matches last year's total. Not that he's been a touchdown machine over the years. The first year he caught 7 of them. Since then, his season high for touchdowns is 5. But that's because the quarterbacks, they've gone through 11 different starting quarterbacks since he's been here in 2019. Now he's got the guy, and the belief is in him, and how things have turned around. Remember the first 2 weeks of the season, even though they're 1-1, everybody's wringing their hands like, oh, God, they can't find Terry McLaurin. He's got 8 catches, but only 39 yards. He's a non-factor in the offense. Well, since then, he's got 51% of their receiving yards, which is the high in the NFL. There's no single wide receiver who's got that high of percentage of his passing yards for the team. He's got 29 catches, so he's got 21 catches over the last 4 games, 356 yards and 4 touchdowns, which again matches last year. And he's been a good soldier here through all the dysfunction. He's never said a disparaging word about anybody. And you can hear this in his voice. Didn't get it done yesterday. No medals for trying, but they've got a belief in this quarterback now, and that, especially for somebody like him, now in his 6th year, making all the difference in the world.
No, we didn't fulfill what we wanted to get done because we wanted to come away with a win. There's no moral victories in this, but this is definitely something that we're going to be able to learn from going forward. I like the way we fought to the end, but there's no moral victories. You got to give credit to them. That's why they're a championship-level team. They made the plays to win the game. They did a good job staying on the field. They did a good job getting us off the field. So we got a lot to learn from going forward. But, we came in here and competed at a high level. But other than that, there's no moral victories.
You and Jaden, some of the passes, some of the catches, you really seem to be getting on the same page. How is that connection growing week after week?
Yeah, it's definitely growing, and I'm happy to see that for not just him and myself, but this entire offense. And we just try to be leaders out there. The thing about it is we put in a lot of extra work. We're always constantly talking on and off the field, and it's just cool to see those plays show up in big moments. We're going to continue to mature and get better with one another. I think he's doing a good job of spreading the ball around as well. There's a lot of guys that are making plays out there, but when we got to have plays, I know he trusts me, so I just want to be able to come through for my team, and I'm just thankful to be in a position where they trust me in those big moments. But to have a quarterback like him who's so competitive, who puts in the time and the work and trusts his guys, that makes me want to raise my level of play, and you're starting to see those plays show up. Yeah, we're going to continue to keep working at that and try to get better at that.
Terry, first time in over a month you guys have lost the football game. What's
Yeah.
the messaging kind of going forward here?
Yeah, losing sucks. You know what I mean? It sucks. But we don't have a group of guys that are going to hang their head. We got a group of guys that are just excited to get back to work. We're excited to look at the film tomorrow and see how we can be better going forward next week. I think, off the top of my head, offensively, we just got to be able to find ways to stay on the field, being more third and manageable, and just convert better. But DQ, you should see the look in his eye. He believes in this group that we have. We believe in the group that we have. And we just got to focus on the details going forward.
Yeah, and they need more production from him the rest of the year like they had yesterday. 6 catches for 53 yards and the 2 touchdowns. Tom Lavero, in his column today, he was at the game for the Times yesterday, and he writes, realistically, they should not have a shot to win this game. Lamar Jackson has a big day, 20 of 26 for 323 yards. They get a huge running attack where they run for what was the total? 176 yards. And, they got a huge performance out of Derrick Henry, 24 for 132. But as he says, they had their shots to win with a defense that's really suffered from the remnants of the disastrous Ron Rivera regime in the game, with Washington's version of Derrick Henry, Brian Robinson, sidelined with a knee injury. They had no business going toe-to-toe with the Ravens. Still, they were, even with 2 defenders inactive, because the team felt putting quarterback Emmanuel Forbes and linebacker defensive end Jamin Davis on the field would have damaged them. This defense is not good enough to have 2 number 1 picks as spectators, but it has Daniels. And they believed they were in this fight because Daniels, who completed 24 of 35 passes for 264 yards and 2 touchdowns, including a remarkable throw to Terry McLaurin on 4th and goal in the beginning of the 4th quarter to cut the Baltimore lead to 27-20, has instilled that belief. And McLaurin talked about that. This is a high-level throw. I mean, you're seeing people who analyze quarterbacks around the league looking at some of the things that Jaden Daniels does and says that this shouldn't be for a player in his 6th game in his NFL career. But as McLaurin described it, was called a choice route in the corner of the end zone there. And he had the option either to turn right or turn left, depending on how he was covered by the corner. And when he made his move left, Daniels read the movement and put the ball in the corner. Nobody could catch it. And Terry McLaurin made the catch inbounds on 4th down. It was just a remarkable throw, a remarkable play by 2 guys who are clearly on the same page there. Sam Cosmi has been through a lot of the dysfunction here. He's now in his 4th year with the Commanders and said this about what he felt in the huddle as they were down 2 touchdowns, but he felt like even against a team like Baltimore on the road, they had a shot.
There was no question or waver of what we could do out there as a team. Offensively, we were still on it. There wasn't a dip or anything like that. Again, we still have that guy in the backfield. So we just know as an O-line, especially, that if we give him some time, he can still make some really special plays. So, like I said, we got things to fix up and clean up and work on. But I still have a lot of belief in this team.
Yeah, and they have veterans who have been there. Zach Ertz won a Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles. I didn't get too excited when he came here. He was cut by Arizona at the middle of last season. He caught on with the Lions when they had some injuries, and had the Lions made the Super Bowl, he would have played with them. But there was no great demand for him. There was a connection with Cliff Kingsbury, who they worked together in Arizona. But he's been a huge addition to this team, and very smart for a rookie quarterback to have a safety valve who he knows is going to be where he has to be. And there's no problem with Zach Ertz. There's always, that's always a good check down for him. Ertz, another productive day, 4 catches, and he had 48 yards receiving. Let's see. Zach Ertz, yes, so 68 yards. He had 4 catches, 68 yards. Pretty good day. And he's the guy who says, hey, fellas, I've been around this league a long time. I played on a Super Bowl team. I know what it takes, and we're getting there, and we're going to get better.
We just got to be able to play just a little better. It's going to take 10% more to beat a team like that's played together for a long time at a high level, and we just got to play better. It comes down to execution in this league. They just executed a little better than us, but for a team that's consistently in the AFC Championships, playing long into the postseason, we felt like we gave them our best shot, and even then we feel like we left a little bit on the table for sure.
I mean, this is the first time you guys lost in over a month. What's kind of the messaging going forward from DQ and kind of the leaders of this group?
Yeah, no one's got too high from the past 4 wins. No one is going to get too low from this one game. This is a long season. It's a marathon. We got to continually get better. I preach it all the time. The team we are today cannot be the team we are in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month from now, 2 months from now. We just got to continue to improve in every aspect. Continue to develop chemistry with Jaden. Keep letting him do his thing, improve on the run game, tackling, all the fundamental stuff that wins football games in this league. We just got to continue to improve on.
Ertz is the guy that keeps him in the right perspective. He said when they were 4-1, nobody's going to remember this 4-1 start. Let's see where we are, and that's going to be probably his message the rest of the year. Reaction from Jaden Daniels. Now, he's not great at news conferences. He's not. He doesn't really expound on his answers, but his constant has been, this is just one. Turn the page. Move on to the next one. So this was the opening part of his news conference last night after the loss. Excuse me.
We just didn't finish some opportunities. Great defense that we were able to go up and have a challenge against and face today. But at the end of the day, man, we just focus on us. Man, we got to go out there and we got to execute. They got some stops, and, that's what they pride themselves on doing.
Obviously, it's a next man up situation, but to not have B-Rob and what he provides, how did that make you guys a little more one-dimensional, perhaps, than you would have preferred?
I mean, B-Rob is a great player, but, like I said, the next man up thing, whatever we're asked to do, we got to go out there and do our job.
What do you think you learned today?
That we're going to play these type of games. Super Bowl contender team. Obviously, they were in the AFC Championship game last year. They got great players all around the field, but it's very promising that we're able to be in this type of game. But moving forward, man, it's not going to get any easier. So we're going to have to go back and watch the film and execute higher, and hopefully on some games coming forward on the other end of that.
That's pretty much how he's answered everything this year. That's only one. Move on. But here he's saying. This is the closest he's getting, I guess, to puffing out his chest, if you will, that they are feeling like they're getting pretty close here.
Yeah, I mean, we're right there. We're never going to give up. We're competing. We're fighting. Move on to the next.
And you got a shot when you do. Now, there is concern about Jonathan Allen, and I really feel bad for him. He hasn't, been a part of a, he hasn't really stood out, let's put it that way, through the first 6 games. But we're going to find out today from Dan Quinn. He said he would have an update. It's possible he's out for the year. And his 8th year, I think they have an exit ramp from his contract. So this could be it. And just too bad that he has been such a good soldier and has played well on bad teams. And when the team is finally good, he's got an injury which could end his stay in Washington. Maybe he comes back next year on a lesser contract, but reality is they may be ready to move on from him. They've drafted behind him. They've got other defensive linemen ready to step in, and that's kind of a shame. A couple of things from Dan Quinn. One is about this team that they lost to yesterday. and, he didn't want to use the term measuring stick going into this game. You understand that? But this is how he answers this question from David Aldridge.
A group like Baltimore that's been together has had some continuity. How does that show up in key situations?
Yeah, that's a good question, Dave. A lot of respect for them because they played to their identity, played tough. I told, John that after the game, as that was a quintessential finish, by you and your guys, and the way to go close it out. So both teams, I thought, have tough identities. And then I did say to the team, these are really important games for us to be in, to know this is what it's like to go and fight, and we need these, I called it a test inside, but we need these environments, we need the space and feel really comfortable in it, and that's what I wanted them to get across today, like being real comfortable in these kind of fights. And I think what I'm trying to say, Dave, like I felt like they were. They've been in the tight ones, and so that's why it was important for us to be in this and having the fight all the way till the end to give us a chance at it. That was what I was looking for.
When you play a team that's had that kind of experience, and it's not the moral victory question, but how do you build on what you guys were able to do so that if you play another team like that that gives you a good shot, you can
I think
put it away?
The answer is we try to take the lessons that are applied for us. What are we going to take from this game? I would say you want to get better in every game, but I think there's some specific things that we can get better at, a lot better at, from this game. And that's what I expect us to do. But different guys had to step up, some guys going down, some injuries or some penalties on third down where like that happens and you got to go, attack the next series and going. So even in the hardest of drives, goes a long one, they get a penalty. Like you can't let that deflate you into the next drive.
Yeah, the first touchdown pass to McLaurin, they had a false start in the red zone, and they overcame that. So that was encouraging, and those are things that they have to continue to build on. The other thing is this last thing from Quinn. It's how the game was closed out and how they had their opportunities but didn't get it done, and realize how far they still have to go when it comes to finishing out games. It's what happened the week before against Cleveland is not going to happen very often, where your quarterback gets to sit on the sidelines and choke it up with a PR person. These games are going to be, the last 11 are pretty much going to be like this. This is the way the league is.
Going down at the end, we were down 2 scores, and so we were really clear if we got to a certain timeline, we would kick the field goal to go get a stop to give us another chance. So I thought, I'm pleased that the team understood the strategy there, where this is what we have to do to win when you're down 10 points, that it's not an ideal situation to be in. But knowing that we were able to communicate, if we get to this spot, we're going to kick it. We ended up, throwing an incomplete, or maybe Jaden even ran out of bounds. It was like his last drive. So to kick a field goal into that spot, go get into there to get that stop, that one leaves a mark, because if you get a stop and you get a punt, at least you have a good chance. Hey, man, it's a long drive to get into the end zone, but you got a shot. And with him, I feel like we're always in the fight, because sometimes he might just make a play outside the pocket with his legs that other people aren't capable of. And, they did a good job today of trying to corral him. There's still some times he gets outside and makes plays. So the lessons are there for us to learn. We will learn them. But I would say we're strong in the situations in our young time together, to reference what we were talking about earlier. And that's really important, because I think you guys probably know it better than me. Through the first 6 weeks, I think it's 75% of the games are close to that. Maybe it's 70% are within 1 score, within 8 points. And so that's the fun part of our league. Like, there's battles, and today was a battle. And when we take our shots, we got to learn from them and say, all right, we're going to be in a lot of these kind of fights against a lot of good teams. And I want us, that's why I was referring to, like, I want us to be comfortable in those spots. But you do have to go through them. And when you get a big, nice win at the end, we're able to pull people out. Those are fun. Theirs are good. And we definitely want more of those. But the ones today, I'd say sometimes the lessons there are just as effective.
That's Dan Quinn yesterday. We'll hear more from him today, particularly on the injuries and as they get ready to play the Carolina Panthers as 7.5-point favorites. Panthers give up a lot of points. And Washington, while they didn't score like they have been over the past few weeks, they did put 23 on the board against a really good Ravens defense. Not necessarily a great pass defense, but they stuffed the run. And Washington playing with, one leg tied behind their back because they didn't have Brian Robinson. I don't think Brian Robinson makes that much of a difference in the game, but it gives them an ability to maybe stretch drives a little bit more, and we'll see if he's going to be. They were hoping to have him ready to go. He didn't practice all week, but they decided to keep him out, and it may be because they thought, this is going to be a difficult team to run on, and let's save him for these games coming up at home against Carolina and Chicago. Bram is coming up next. I will see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.